I've never done a response video to the Women's Prize for Fiction or any other list, but I psyched myself up with a new teapot and blooming tea, a new blouse, and I'm ready to give it the old college try. Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. I'm Marilyn Maya, the baby boomer booktuber, and today I'm going to attempt to show you what my favorites are for the Women's Prize for Fiction. The long list came out a few days ago, and I've been watching a lot of videos, response videos, and it made me want to do a response video as well. I don't usually look out for new releases. In the past, the only new releases that I used to buy were like what they used to call blockbusters, and I never really had a good experience with most of them. I'm thinking of like the Carpetbaggers, Harold Robbins, and things like that. But I wanted to try the Women's Prize because it was the International Women's Day was a few days ago, and I want to see what's popular, what I would like. First, I want to tell you about my new teapot. It's smaller than I thought it would be. I got it on sale, but it's really interesting because it comes with, and I think that's what they're really selling, this tea bloom flowering tea. And you put it in this little attachment, and you put hot water, and then you watch the flowers bloom while the tea is made. I think that's a very interesting way of drinking green tea. And it has green tea leaves, jasmine, marigold, chrysanthemums. So I want to see what it's like. Yeah, so let me just tell you a few things before I start the video. One is that I'm having a procedure done on my eyes on Monday. So if I make any big mistakes, please forgive me. I don't, I really wanted to do this video while, the interest about the Women's Prize was still bubbling in our BookTube community. But on the other hand, I'm not seeing very well. So if I make a few mistakes, please take that into consideration. Also, I have different tastes than well, everyone has different tastes. But I might say I hate this book, or I would never read this book, but that doesn't mean you might feel the opposite way. So, we all have different tastes. So if I'm a little glib about certain books, take that into consideration. I'm living on this planet for 7 decades, and I think I know what I like by the sound of a book. So while a book might be good for some people, it might not be good for me. So I printed out the list of all of the Women's Prize for Fiction 2022. And first I wanted to see if they were in my library, because, I can't afford to go, some of them I haven't come out yet, and my library might be getting them, but also I wanted to read about them and see if the synopsis sounded like something I would like. So I'm just going to read you them first and maybe show you a photo if I'm able to do that with my eye situation. And I made a list, checked it twice or 3 times, just kidding. And these are the books I want to read for sure. And one of them, the sentence, I wanted to read before this list came out. So there's only 3 books that I have to say were for sure, not probably. Then I have another book, maybe, probably. There's 2 books in this list, if they come my way, if I'm able to get them. And then there's a couple of books on the fence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I didn't hate what I read about them, but they're not usually my jam. And then, I shouldn't say this, but I was reading a few reviews about certain books, and I guess I shouldn't mention what the book was. Oh, yeah, I'll mention it. It's Papa's Show. And it's also called it's called This One Sky Day. And I read some reviews about it. And one said, it's wildly creative. And it's, you have to really, it's something to go through, but it's worth it. And one person said, I'd rather eat a moth. So I had to make a list of I'd rather eat a moth. And please don't be offended, but how could I let that one go? So let me go through the list and see if I could coordinate everything. The first book on the list was The Bread the Devil Knead, like Kned, by Lisa Allen-Agostini from Trinidad. One thing I liked about this book, and if I find it, I'll have it on this side. And it's written in dialect, which I enjoy. I know quite a little bit of a lot of languages and a lot of dialects. So, for example, I live in Hawaii, and we have a local dialect that a lot of people are completely lost in. But, you live here long enough and you pick it up. And it's also called Pidgin English. And I think in Trinidad, they have a sort of same thing. So what is it about? So basically, it's about Althea Lopez is about to turn 40, a fashionable mixed-race boutique manager who lives and works in Trinidad's capital city, Port of Spain. She is feisty, fiercely independent, and morally ambiguous. And I won't read you everything, but it says, the music of Lisa Allen-Agostini's writing voice is gloriously specific to Trinidad, yet this heart-wrenching story of a woman both liberated and in need of liberation has universal resonance. So basically it's about, that's the reason I put it in Books on the Fence, actually. And because it's about spousal and abuse of women by men, and I don't really want to read about that. So that's the first book. The second book is Salt Lick, Lulu, Allison, Unbound Digital. This is an interesting book because it was crowdfunded. And unfortunately, it's in my I'd rather eat a moth book. And why? Because I don't read this kind of book, sort of a dystopian book, but you might like it. Britain is awash. The sea creeps into the land. Brambles and forests swamp, derelict towns. Food production has moved overseas, and people are forced to move to the cities for work. The countryside is empty. A chorus, the herd voice of feral cows, wander this newly wild land, watching over changing times, speaking with love and exasperation. This book does sound interesting. It's not my jam, but I think I know why it was picked, because it's to the moment of the environment, and to have cows, for example, having a voice, because they don't really have a voice in our society. And I'm talking about not a real voice, but you know what I mean. But it's just not for me. And also, one thing I like about it that you might like about it is that not only was it crowdfunded, but it was independently published. So if you like that, and I'm for independently published books, go for it. But for me, it's I'd rather eat a moth. Okay, so the next book on the list is Careless by Kirsty Capes, Orient Fiction, United Kingdom. Believe it or not, this book is, it's not available. I don't know when it comes out. I'm sure people already know when it comes out. But it's surprisingly, on my 3 lists of what I want to read for sure. And why? Okay. Here it is. Thank you for bearing with me. At 3:04 p.m. on a hot, sticky day in June, Bess finds out she's pregnant. She can tell her social worker, Henry, but he's useless. She should tell her foster mother, Lisa, but she won't understand. She really ought to tell Boy, but she hasn't spoken to him in weeks. Bess knows more than anyone that love doesn't come without conditions. But this isn't a love story. And I read something from an English newspaper, and it said, teenage heroines are 10 a penny, but every now and again one will saunter up, offer you a fag, that's a cigarette, and hit you with her story right between the eyes. Careless, a debut novel, is the story of Bess, a 15-year-old girl, finds out that she's pregnant by Boy, a 19-year-old rebel without a cause, shelf stalker at Tesco, which is like our 7-Eleven, whom she meets when he crashes a stolen car into a church. Oh no. Getting pregnant at 15 is complicated enough, but Bess has been in the care of a foster family since the age of 4, and her relationship with foster mom Lisa is fraught. Should she keep the baby, have an abortion, and pursue her dreams? This sounds like a young adult novel, which I don't usually read, but the foster care system in America is broken, and I suppose it's broken in the UK as well. So for some reason, this feisty girl caught my attention, and I want to read it. So it's on my for sure list. Okay, the next one is Remote Sympathy by Catherine Chidgey, Europa Editions, New Zealand. I have something to say about this book. It's not on my for sure list. It's my books, maybe, probably, if they come my way. However, let me read you something about it and tell you why I want to talk about it. Okay, so moving away from their lovely apartment in Munich isn't nearly as wrenching an experience for Frau Greta Hahn as she had feared. Their new home is even lovelier than the one they left behind. And best of all, right on their doorstep are some of the finest craftsmen from all over Europe. Frau Hahn and other officers' wives living in this small community can order anything they desire, whether new curtains made from the finest French silks, Life here in Buchenwald would appear to be idyllic. Lying just beyond the forest that surrounds them, so close and yet so remote is the looming presence of a work camp. Frau Hahn's husband, SS Sturmbannführer Dietrich Hahn, is to take up a powerful new position as the camp's administrator. Okay, corruption is rife at every level. On. And when Frau Hahn is forced into an unlikely and poignant alliance with one of Buchenwald's prisoners, Dr. Leonard Weber, her naive ignorance about what is going on so nearby is challenged. A decade earlier, Dr. Weber had invented a machine, the sympathetic vitalizer. At the time, he believed that its subtle resonances might cure cancer. But does it really work? One way or another, it might yet save a life. A tour de force about the evils of obliviousness. Remote Sympathy compels us to question our continuing and willful ability to look the other way in a world that is once more enthralled to the idea that everything, even facts, truth, and morals, is relative. A novel of devastating beauty that will leave readers shaken and exhilarated. Okay, I went into this pretty heavily because I don't usually read Holocaust fiction. I read a lot and collect Holocaust memoirs. And I never read The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. However, on a channel that will be nameless, a person commenter who shall be nameless, said, well, she said basically, or he said basically, why are we still talking about obliviousness, about Nazi Germany in 2022? And I thought, duh. obliviousness when we're going through what we're going through right now in Ukraine. You know, a lot of people just see the war through television or through their phones, and it can make you almost oblivious to the horror that's going on right now, not in 1944. So I'm willing to give this a try. You know, like I said, I don't usually go for made up stuff about the Holocaust, but you know, it's very timely, and maybe that's why it was picked. Okay, so I'm getting off my high horse right now, and let's go on to other books in this list. The next one I'm not going to go into very much is called The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Helter. It's Viking, it's the United States, and it is more or less a book club kind of book. I shouldn't say a book club kind of book, more of a blockbuster kind of book. That's what I meant to say. And what did I write about it? It is a perfect July morning, and Ellie, a 50-year-old happily married mother of 3, awakens at the Paper Palace, the family summer place which she has visited every summer of her life. But this morning is different. Last night, Ellie and her oldest friend Jonas crept out the back door into the darkness and had sex for the first time. All with their spouses chatted away inside. Now, over the next 24 hours, Ellie will have to decide between the life she has made with her genuinely beloved husband Peter and imagined with her childhood love. I don't like this type of story about adultery and you know, kind of romance but not really, and kind of saga but not really. So it's not for me, but like I said, it might be for you. Then is Flamingo, and that caught my eye. It's by Rachel Elliott, Tinder Press, United Kingdom. And unfortunately, I didn't have it. It might not be out yet, I'm not sure. But I didn't have it in my library. So, what is it about? It's, first there are the Flamingos. And then there were 2 families, Sherry and Leslie and their daughters, Ray and Pauline, and Eve and her son Daniel. Sherry loves her husband, Leslie. She also loves Eve. It wouldn't have been a happier summer, but then Eve left and everything went gray. Now Daniel is all grown up and broken. And when he turns up at Sherry's door, it's almost as if they've all come home again. But there's still one missing. Where is Eve? And what exactly is her story? That didn't make me want to read it. But when I read about it, it says, Flamingo is a novel about the power of love, homelessness, and learning to be fearless, acceptance, celebration of kindness, of tenderness, set in 2018 and 80s. It's a song for the brokenhearted and the big-hearted. This I put on the fence about. Okay, so what is the next book? The next book is The Sentence by Louise Eldridge. And I definitely want to read this book. I wanted to read it before it came on any list. And I don't even have to tell you about it, but I'll tell you what I like about it. Now, Louise Eldridge lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I lived in Minneapolis for 5 years. And 2 of my children live in St. Paul. And I didn't know she's the bookstore owner of a bookstore called The Sentence, which is the name of the book. I mean, I already love her, and I've never read anything by her. So Flora, an independent bookstore's most burdensome customer, is even more exasperating in death, deciding to haunt her favorite haunt, birch bark books. So I guess it isn't The Sentence, the bookstore in the book. But I think her bookstore in Minneapolis is called The Sentence. But yet it says ghost, but I was reading that this is not a book really about ghosts. Oh, it says the name of this beloved indie will be familiar to many Minneapolitans, as it's the real-life bookstore run by Louise Eldridge. I thought it was called The Sentence, but it's probably called Birch Bark Books. Okay. So she plays a supporting role in this love letter to books and bookstore culture. It's no ordinary ghost story, as the motley crew of characters who effortlessly endear themselves to you, despite their shortcomings, and maybe because of them, reckons with profound words both self-inflicted and societal. Readers, this novel just might compel you to confront some of your own as well. That's what the best books do. I'm going to start with Louise Eldridge with this book because I think it's more of a book that I can get through. I shouldn't say that. I'm not saying that. In fact, I was interested in some of her former books, but this one might get me started on, to learn more about it. The next book is Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Kupersmith, One World, United States, and my library is going to get it. So this is on my, unfortunately, I'd rather eat a moth. So it's the reason it's two young women go missing decades apart. Both are fearless, both are lost, and both will have their revenge. I don't like revenge books mostly. So in 1986, the teenage daughter of a wealthy Vietnamese family loses her way in an abandoned rubber plantation while fleeing her angry father. 2011, a young, unhappy Vietnamese American woman disappears from her new home in Saigon. Part puzzle, part revenge tale, part ghost story. This book takes us from colonial mansions to ramshackle zoos, from sweaty nightclubs, etc., etc. This is not for me, but it might be for you. The next book is one of the books that is in my for sure list, and it's called Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. This is a New Zealand book and hasn't come out yet. Meg Mason is a very popular writer, I found out. I haven't read any of her books, but I think she writes mostly young adult stories, but I'm not sure. So what is it about? Everyone tells Martha Friel she is clever and beautiful, a brilliant writer who has been loved every day of her adult life by one man, her husband Patrick. A gift her mother once said not everyone gets. So why is everything broken? Why is Martha on the edge of 40, friendless, practically jobless, and so maybe she's just sensitive? Someone who finds it harder to be alive than most people. I love that. Or maybe, as she has long believed, there's something wrong with her. Something that broke when a little bomb went off in her brain at 17 and left her changed in a way that no doctor or therapist has ever been able to explain. Forced to return to her childhood home to live with her dysfunctional bohemian parents, but without the help of her devoted foul-mouthed sister Ingrid, often sad. And why did Patrick decide to leave? Maybe. This sounds like a book that I would really like to get into because it deals with mental illness, feeling you don't have a place in the world, some kind of identity, some kind of what's wrong with me. This is a baby boomer type of book. So I hope to get this book. The next book on the list of the Women's Prize for Fiction 2022 long list is The Exhibitionist by Charlotte Mantle, United Kingdom. Unfortunately, this is my I'd rather eat a moth book. It's already, when it says meet the Hanrahan family gathering for a momentous weekend, famous artist and notorious egoist Ray Hanneman. He's preparing for an exhibition, and his wife is also an artist. I don't want to read anything about egotistical men right now. So that is I'd rather eat a moth. But people who like art might really get into it. I like art, but I don't think it's so much about art as it is about family dynamics in this particular family. And while I love character-driven novels, this family dynamics doesn't really catch my attention. And, well, we're almost finished. Now we get to Ruth Ozeki. She's supposedly a Canadian author, but for some reason I thought she was born in Hawaii or she had Hawaii ties. I've never read anything from her, and her newest book is The Book of Form and Emptiness by Canongate Books. And I've heard a lot about this on booktube, and I can kind of tell you without looking at it, but I didn't want to get it wrong. So it's about grief. After his father dies, Benny O finds he can hear objects talking, teapots, marbles, and sharpened pencils, babbling in anger or distress. His mother, struggling to support their household alone, starts collecting things to give her comfort. I can really relate to that, not personally, but I've known a lot of people who collect and hoard to give them comfort. Overwhelmed by the clamor of all the stuff, Benny seeks refuge in the beautiful silence of the public library. I do want to get to this book, but I want to read her first book. Oh, no, I don't know if it's her first book, but it's something about creative or creation, book of creation, I think, before I read this. I'm not that much into magical realism, but this book is more about grief, resilience, creativity, and psychological difference, and the importance of reading, which is very much a subject that I really am interested in. And we're getting down to the, oh no. So Leon Ross, This One Sky Day, which is also Puppet Show, United Kingdom. And I'm not going to get much into that, except that there's a lot of magical realism. It takes place in one day. It's about, now if you like fantasy, I think this might be the book for you. Dawn breaks across the archipelago of Puppet Show. The world is stirring, awake again, each resident with their own list of things to do. A wedding feast to conjure and cook, an infidelity to investigate, a lost soul to set free. As the sun rises, two star-crossed lovers try to find their way back to one another across this single day. When night falls, all have been given a gift, and many are no longer the same. Now, if you like fantasy, the sky is pink, and some wonder if it'll ever be blue again. Wonderfully creative book. I'd rather eat a moth. And this was the book that said that gave me that saying. The next book, I'm not going to talk about too much. It's The Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead, which I found funny because her name is Ship, but it's about aviation. And it's sort of like an Amelia Earhart story, and it goes into two points of view. And I'm not really that interested in, it's sort of like a saga, and it's about aviation, but a lot of people are into it. I'm not going to say I'd rather eat a moth, but if it comes my way, I'll look at it. The next one is the final revival of Opal and Nev in the United States, and this has gotten very good reviews. It's about a rock duo who they were, I think they're multiracial, or they're interracial couple who had a big fallout in the 80s. And now they're getting back together, and, old stuff comes back to haunt them, I guess. So, so what do I feel about this? I think I'd like to read this. I like music, and I think it would be an interesting read. So it's on my maybe, probably books. And the last book is Creatures of Passage, I'll just say it's Washington, D.C., and the ghost that haunts it, I'd rather eat a moth. It's by Marowa Yajide, and from the United States, Jacaranda Books. I don't like books about ghosts usually, though I am going to read the sentence, and that's sort of like about a ghost. Yeah, so I hope you got something out of my rambles about these books. Like I said, I don't normally read new releases, so I'm not surprised that I only found 3 that are definite reads for me. But the definite reads are pretty definite. So that's good. As long as I find a book that I'm interested in, that's great. And I'm really for women having a voice in publication. I'm a writer myself. And we never had a voice for many years. It was mostly white males who were the best-selling authors. And now that it's changing, let's support women. And so please subscribe if you haven't before. I'd love to have you here. And please click the notification bell and comment. I always love to hear from you. I'm going to have my surgery on Monday, so hopefully my next reviews won't be so disjointed. But I really wanted to get this out while, like I said, there's buzz going on. So until we meet again, my friends, stay well and aloha.